Hi, good day. I hope you are doing great. In this video, we are going to venture language structure concerning interdisciplinary fields of modern schools of linguistics taught by Zeki Hamawan. Thanks to our professor, Dr. Mendoza. The aim is to offer a better understanding of how linguistics builds alliances with other sciences to deal with emerging needs. When talking about linguistics, it is a social science that shares a common ground with other sciences or intellectual disciplines. When disciplines interact with each other, usually as a consequence of individual sciences finding it difficult to resolve serious problems, they form an interdisciplinary fields. What is an interdisciplinary fields? It is one that combines the perspectives of two or more academic disciplines into a new approach to tackle an emerging need. These collaborations are important and make significant contributions to linguistic studies. This is done by crossing boundaries between established disciplines and using their methods and insights in the pursuit of a common task. Why study an interdisciplinary field? It enables the exploration of an area of interest from more than one perspective. It opens up the means to make connections between ideas across different disciplinary boundaries. It also enhances learning experiences by expanding awareness of the approaches and techniques of different disciplines. Moreover, two cognitive science interdisciplinaries deal with the mental aspects of language. The mind, which is the non-physical part, and the brain, the physical part, the two interdisciplinaries combine methods and all theories from psychology, neurology, and linguistics to generate a fuller understanding of human language. In psycholinguistics, the interest is in the way in which language is comprehended and produced together with the cognitive process lying behind it. The central thesis is that mental processes underlie the acquisition, comprehension, and production of language. These are the major topics: language acquisition and speech production. Language acquisition usually refers to a first language, which is the children's acquisition of their native language. So how do children come to know their native languages? According to behaviorists, language is learned step by step through observation, imitation, and reinforcement. According to generativists, children are born with an innate ability to learn language via cognitive and neural mechanisms that are part of being human. According to constructivists, language acquisition is a process of gradual pattern learning. Now, the process of developing and creating speech is what we call speech production. A child develops speech in stages such as babbling, producing single words, or holophrastic phase, then two words or telegraphic phase, to variation in word forms and vocabulary, and so becomes a somewhat fluent speakers. While an adult develops speech in three major levels of processing, we have the conceptualization, formulation, and articulation. Let's proceed to neurolinguistics, also called neurological linguistics, which studies the interaction between language and brain. An area in the left hemisphere, known as Broca's area or the speech center, plays an important role in speech production. Another region known as Wernicke's area is involved in speech comprehension. The largest part of the brain is the motor cortex, which is responsible for the muscular movement. Neurologists wish to understand how the brain processes the four skills: speaking, listening, reading, and writing, and they investigate by using the high-tech equipment to visualize the brain as it processes language using the imaging technology to locate areas in the brain where there seems to be neural structures. The primary focuses are aphasia and dyslexia. Acquired aphasia is a speech disorder caused by brain damage that results in the loss of ability to understand and produce language. Aphasia is classified by the skills affected. Agraphia refers to difficulty in writing, alexia refers to difficulty in reading, Anomia refers to difficulty in word finding. Agrammatism refers to difficulty in grammar. There are types of acute aphasia depending on the damaged part of the brain. Expressive aphasia occurs when damage occurs to Broca's area and is characterized by reduced amount of speech, slow pace of speaking, and distorted articulation. Receptive aphasia and is characterized by incoherent speech and difficulties in finding appropriate words. Conduction aphasia is characterized by mispronunciation, disrupted rhythm, and hesitations and pauses. Another focus in neurolinguistics is dyslexia, a disability that affects reading and writing. People with dyslexia read very slowly, confuse the order of the letters in words, find it difficult to recognize the different sounds that make up words and relate them to letters, and may perceive words as distorted with the order and shapes of letters appearing to jump. For instance, writing saw instead of was. Dyslexia can be traced to two origins. Either it developed from early childhood or it was acquired in adulthood as a result of brain damage. People with dyslexia often have good skills in other areas such as creative thinking and problem solving. Treatment of people with dyslexia usually is based on one-to-one teaching with specialist teacher. Psycholinguistics and neurolinguistics are both studies of the comprehension and production of language in its spoken, written, and signed forms. However, they differ in other aspects. Psycholinguistics is interested in the psychological factors which enable humans to acquire, use, and understand language. By contrast, neurolinguistics is interested in the brain mechanisms which underlie language. Psycholinguistics explores the cognitive process involved in the ordinary use of language. By processes is meant perception, memory, and thinking. Neurolinguistics, on the other hand, explores the neurolinguistical underpinnings that underlie language production. It explores the brain structures responsible for linguistic structures. Psycholinguistics uses behavioral reactions. It is not concerned with the physical qualities of the brain. In contrast, neurolinguistics uses high-tech equipment to investigate how the brain processes grammatical or ungrammatical structures, sometimes going down to the level of neurons. Moving on to society-focused interdisciplinaries, the sociolinguistics and anthropolinguistics. In sociolinguistics, the principal thesis is that social characteristics influence the way language is used to different situations. One goal is to explain why we speak differently in different social contexts. This work relies heavily on statistical correlation of social traits and language variation using data collected by sociological techniques such as questionnaires and direct observation of linguistic behavior. Sociolinguistics differs from linguistic sociology of language. The former is a subfield linguistics, studying the impact of society on language, while the latter is subfield of sociology, studying the impact of language in society. When doing a research, there are emerging themes in sociolinguistics. First is dialectology, sometimes called dialect geography, aims to identify the particular speech factors of dialects and discover the regional boundaries between them. Dialectologists are interested in several aspects of how dialects differ, including vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation. Second is language variation, which studies distinctive forms of a language as a social activity. The language of a single speaker, their habits of speech and writing, conditioned by the individual's personality, is called their idiolect. Associated with maleness or femaleness is genderlect. A social dialect used by a group of people that is the dialect correlating with a particular social class or occupational group is sociolect. The technical language of a particular subject field such as legal English, advertising English, or literary English is called technolect. Dialect should not be confused with accent. Accent refers to a person's pronunciation, which may tell the region or country he or she from. For instance, a Boston accent or an Australian accent. Dialect incorporates grammar and vocabulary as well as accent. In some cases, a person can use two different dialects of a language, whether regional or social. Such a person is described as a bidialectal, and the phenomenon is called bidialectalism. Several types of bidialectal situation exist. One of the best known is diglossia, the situation in which two language varieties exist side by side in a community, with each being used for a different purpose. One dialect is the standard, formal or high variety used in government, media, education, and religious services. The other one is the non-standard, casual or low variety used among family members and friends. Diglossia is found in Arab countries. The third one is social variation. It exists mainly because speakers have to come up with ways of defining new experiences which surface with time and progress. There are several dimensions of social variation, including register, jargon, and slang. Registers are determined by such factors as social occasion, context, purpose, and audience. They are marked by having specialized vocabulary, turns of phrases, and grammatical constructions. For example, special words like the use, love, and tramlines are used in tennis. Jargon is a language peculiar to a particular trade, profession, or group bound together by mutual interests. For instance, the jargon of business, law, medicine, police, and so on. An important feature of technical jargon is precision and efficiency of communication. For example, linguists use a special language to describe the way language works, such as prefix, suffix, tense, and the like. Jargon should not be confused with argot, a secret language used by particular group, such as thieves, to prevent outsiders from understanding their conversations. Slang is a type of informal language, usually spoken rather than written, peculiar to a particular group of people, such as teenagers, army recruits, or pop groups, characterized by the use of vulgar and especially taboo expressions which are not considered appropriate for formal situations. The fourth one is language contact. It occurs particularly in areas of language skill immigration and in language border areas where there is a high degree of communication between speakers of different languages. The influence may affect phonetics, syntax, semantics, or communicative strategies such as address, forms, and greetings. The most common products of language contact are pidgins, creoles, and code switching. Linguistically, a pidgin is characterized by a limited vocabulary and a reduced grammatical structure which may expand when it is used over a long period and for a variety of purposes. For example, when foreign traders or managers need to communicate with groups of suppliers or workers from different language background. A creole, on the other hand, is a former pidgin, but whose sentence structures and vocabulary bulks have grown and developed to become far more complex than those of a pidgin. As a result, it is used as full-fledged standardized native language. The classification of a creole is usually based on its main source of vocabulary: English Creole, French Creole, Portuguese Creole, and so on. Examples of English Creoles are Jamaican Creole and Hawaiian Creole. Code switching, also called code shifting, can take place in a conversation when a person starts speaking in one language and the changes to another, sometimes in the middle of a sentence or the middle of a phrase. Now let's proceed to anthropolinguistics or anthropological linguistics. It investigates how culture affects language or how cultural practices are reflected in language patterns. It studies language as a cultural phenomenon and regards speaking as a cultural practices. We have here the fundamental concerns. The first one is cultural schemas or cultural models. Cultural schemas are then cultural practices which guide the behavior of people in familiar situations. Consider as an example the word police. In some cultures, people consider the police as a symbol of safety. They have a schema of police as brave protectors. In other cultures, people consider the police as a symbol of harassment. They have a schema of police as power abusers. On the other hand, cultural models are ingrained in human everyday life, meaning that people share the same beliefs and practices. They are key to understanding how humans make sense of and understand social issues and how this understanding is translated into action. Consider this example. In some societies, there is a cultural model that requires people to give up a seat on a bus to an elderly person. This cultural model is widely used by the public and reflects beliefs and attitudes about how the world should work. To compare, sociolinguistics deals with the study of language in social contexts. Anthropology linguistics deals with the study of language in a cultural context and how social forms of the society are shaped by it. Sociolinguistics focuses on the correlation between language variation and social traits such as age, gender, race, ethnicity, or class. Anthropolinguistics focuses on the correlation between cultural forms and language forms. Sociolinguistics resembles sociology, collecting survey responses, compiling statistics, and seeking correlation systematically. Anthropolinguistics resembles anthropology, emphasizing long-term fieldwork and participant observation. Quite similar to anthropolinguistics is ethnolinguistics, sometimes called cultural linguistics. It has been adopted in several areas of applied linguistic research, including intercultural communication, second language learning, and world Englishes. As an example, Spanish and German are two languages that assign gender to inanimate objects. For instance, in Spanish, the word for moon is feminine, la luna, whereas it is equivalent in German, der Mond is masculine. Spanish speakers describe the moon as dainty, beautiful, and nurturing, while German speakers describe it as forceful, omnipotent, and rugged. Furthermore, in style-focused interdisciplinaries, there are two interdisciplinaries, the literary linguistics and forensic linguistics. The primary thesis of literary linguistics is that within the language system, the same content can be encoded in more than one linguistic form. The chief concerns are literary text and the non-literary text. In literary text, a text narrates a story. It is typically complex, containing detailed literary devices, especially metaphor and symbolism. It is often fiction, describing events from the imagination of the author and therefore describes reality from a subjective point of view. Examples of literary text include novels, short stories, and poetry. Non-literary text, however, is a text that conveys information. It is typically simple, lacking much figurative language like imagery and metaphor. It is generally non-fiction, describing facts and figures. It describes reality from an objective point of view. Examples include speeches, letters, autobiographies, news, or magazine articles, brochures, advertisements, reports, and editorials. Moreover, in forensic linguistics, also called forensic stylistics, is the application of the findings of theoretical linguistics to the area of crime and law. The fundamental thesis is that language reveals identity, especially in judicial processes. Main issues include the language of legal text. A legal text is a complex type of discourse written in specialized language. For example, contains phrases expressing promises. A will contains verbs expressing transfer of property at death. One role of the forensic linguist is to identify the semantic, syntactic, and lexical properties of such texts. Next is language of legal process. Legal process demands analysis of language in the context of judicial procedure. The proceedings followed during a legal case, for instance, criminal prosecution, civil litigation, arbitration, administrative proceedings, electoral process, legislative process, constitutional process, or interaction and police stations. The third one is by language as evidence. It is meant the type of language reflective of the nature of crime as liable to be examined in court of law. For instance, a suicide note is written to disturb or cover up a murder. A threatening letter is sent in order to mislead investigators. A confession or witness statement is falsified. Whether in civil or criminal scenarios, the words themselves can be critical pieces of evidence. In comparison, literary linguistics is an approach to the analysis of literary text using linguistic techniques. Forensic linguistics applies linguistic techniques to criminal issues. Literary linguistics studies creativity in language use. By contrast, forensic linguistics subjects written or spoken materials or both to linguistic analysis for the sake of speaker identification or author determination. Literary linguistics focuses on the study of the linguistic features of a written text. By contrast, forensic linguistics focuses on the study of the written and spoken language of a suspect or an accused, whether perpetrator, offender, or innocent, to assist police and courts to arrive at the correct verdict. Lastly, we have environment-focused interdisciplinaries that focuses on first, geolinguistics, that language variations are greatly affected by geography, the variation in the way people use their language in terms of sound, lexis, and grammar may be due to location. In summary, geolinguistics' goal is to identify variations in language which stem from spatial differences. The resultant maps and atlases are referred to as products of language cartography. Language maps describe the spatial distribution of forms of language. Language atlases describe the spatial distribution of dialects. Under is a dialect map, a thematic map which shows the distribution of the various forms of a language or the isoglosses of a dialect structure of a language. For example, dialects vary across the United States, and maps show who says exactly what and where. They display the various terms and pronunciations used and where they are used. An example of word choice is the word used for the public device from which one drinks water. In some parts of the United States, it is called a water fountain. In others, a drinking fountain. In yet others, a bubbler. An example of pronunciation is that of the word root. In some parts, the pronunciation rhymes with hoot. In others, it rhymes with out. And in some others, it can be pronounced interchangeably. There are two types of dialect maps, the analytic maps and the linguistic atlas. A linguistic atlas, also dialect atlas, is a collection of maps representing dialectical features for a whole region or a whole linguistic area. Linguistic atlases on which speech variations are recorded are compiled by investigating the dialects of a certain area. Linguistic atlas has two goals. First, to document a cross-section of sounds, words, and structures over space and time. Second, to conduct a language internal analysis leading to a spatial typology and so relate linguistic findings to extra-linguistic phenomena in space. Let's talk about ecolinguistics. Ecolinguistics is an interdisciplinary field that focuses on the interface between language and ecology. It takes into account the ecological context in which language is embedded and sees the interaction between language and environment, physical or social, as central. The goal is achieved by analyzing the ecological context in which language is embedded. Ecolinguistics studies the ways in which environmental topics appear in linguistic texts, or the ways in which language structures transport ecological ideas. In exploratory research, in a broader sense, linguistic diversity is defined as the range of variations exhibited by human languages. Linguistic diversity and biological diversity are intimately related. A change in the environment has an impact of language use and vice versa. It promotes people's awareness that without language, life is pointless. No language means no communication. Consequently, discourse analysis examines language structures and the relationship between them. Ecolinguistics analyzes discourses, both spoken and written, and looks at the ways in which languages describe the environment and the effects of this has on human behavior. Geolinguistics concern with the geographical distribution of languages, their distribution patterns, and spatial structures. By contrast, ecolinguistics is concerned with the interaction between language and its surrounding environment, the interrelation between organisms and their living or non-living surroundings. Geolinguistics identifies variations in language that stem from spatial differences. This is achieved by means of language cartography. By contrast, ecolinguistics emphasizes the role of language in life-sustaining relationships of humans with each other, other species, and physical environment. This is achieved by supporting linguistics diversity. Geolinguistics adopts language geography. Central to this philosophy is the idea that space shapes language practice by influencing ways of speaking. By contrast, ecolinguistics adopts ecosophy. Central to this philosophy is a commitment to ecological harmony or equilibrium, that is interdependence between human beings and nature. That is all, and wrapping up everything, we have learned interdisciplinary fields which combine aspects from two academic sciences. The various fields of linguistics result from different aspects of language investigated. Psycholinguistics deals with the relationship between language and mind. Psycholinguistics are interested in how the mind acquires language. Neurolinguistics deal with the relationship between language and brain. Neurolinguists are interested in the neurological mechanisms involved in the processing of language. Sociolinguistics deals with how social life affects language. Sociolinguists are interested in the social characteristics that influence language. Anthropolinguistics deals with how culture affects language. Anthropolinguists are interested in how culture makes people think and behave differently. Literary linguistics studies the interaction between language and literature. Literary linguists are interested in how features of a text affect its meaning. Forensic linguistics studies the interaction between language and law. Forensic linguists are interested in how the type of language used exposes the person using it. Geolinguistics deal with the geographical distribution of languages throughout the world. Geolinguists are interested in how variations in language stem from spatial differences. Ecolinguistics deals with the interaction between language and environment. Ecolinguists are interested in how language structures reflect environmental influences. And finally, we have just ended the topic. I hope you language structure learners got the essence of learning one of the topics of modern schools of linguistics taught by Zeki Hamawand. This is Claudine Bakar. Have a productive day, fellows.